Welcome to Cybersecurity HQ's Daily News Report. It's November 4th, 2024. We've got a full bulletin today,
Absolutely, lots to cover.
so let's just dive right in.
Let's do it.
Okay, first headline. A stark reminder of the threats that are out there, especially in the education sector. 210,000 individuals impacted by a data breach at Xavier University.
Yeah, this breach was discovered back on July 21st, 2023. Attackers were able to download files, things like names, social security numbers, financial information, all between June 29th and July 18th of that same year.
And it's a long time.
It is.
That's weeks.
Yeah, it is. It really is concerning, that length of time that those attackers were in there undetected.
Now, St. Xavier hasn't actually officially confirmed the attack type,
Right.
but the Alpha Black Cat ransomware gang, they claimed responsibility.
They did, yeah. Back in August 2023. It seems like it aligns with this kind of worrying trend we're seeing that ransomware attacks are becoming more and more common in education. There was a study by Sophos recently that found that 79% of higher education institutions were hit by ransomware in 2023,
Wow.
up from 44% the year before.
Yeah, huge.
Really underscores, I think, the vulnerability of this sector and the urgent need for those really strong cybersecurity defenses.
Definitely. Moving on. Our next headline highlights just how global cybercrime can be. A Nigerian national was sentenced to 26 years in prison, here in the U.S.,
Yeah.
for stealing millions through what they're calling a sophisticated phishing scheme.
Yeah. This case involves Kolade Akinwal Ojalad. He's a 34-year-old residing in the UK. And he was running this pretty complex phishing operation that targeted real estate businesses.
Out of state, okay.
Yeah, so he was compromising email accounts to intercept those wire transfer instructions, redirecting funds to accounts that he and his co-conspirators controlled.
Clever.
Yeah.
So the losses from this are estimated to be about $12 million.
Yeah, around there. But what's really striking is the intended losses were over $100 million.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so this just goes to show how severe the consequences can be for those who engage in cybercrime, especially financial fraud like this.
Yeah.
It also highlights how effective it can be when law enforcement agencies work together across borders to fight these activities.
All right. Now, for a headline that's making a lot of noise in the cybersecurity community, Google has announced that its AI, they're calling it Big Sleep, has found a vulnerability in Squilite. And get this, traditional fuzzing techniques missed it.
Yeah, this is a potentially groundbreaking development. Google's Project Zero and DeepMind teams, they've been working together on this Big Sleep project, and they're using what's called large language models, or LLMs, for offensive security research. And Big Sleep was able to successfully identify this exploitable flaw. It's a stack-based buffer overflow vulnerability. And it was in Squilite, which is a really popular open source database engine.
So to traditional fuzzing, which is commonly used to uncover vulnerabilities, didn't even find this.
It didn't. So this is a major step forward, I think, in AI-driven vulnerability research. And it has the potential to change how we approach software security in a really big way, hopefully making it a lot more robust. Of course, this also raises some big questions about the potential for these powerful AI tools to be used for malicious purposes. And that's a concern that we really need to consider carefully as the technology continues to advance.
For sure. Our next headline, this one focuses on the constant threat from nation-state actors.
Yeah.
The FBI is asking for help identifying some Chinese hacking groups. They're targeting Sophos firewalls.
Right. The FBI is specifically interested in 3 groups: APT-41, APT-31, and Volt Typhoon. And they've been running a long campaign going back to at least 2018, targeting Sophos edge devices. What they do is exploit zero-day vulnerabilities to gain access, then they deploy malware. It's been affecting both private companies and government entities.
I mean, Sophos has been fighting back for years. They've even been using a custom implant to try and monitor the hackers' activities, really trying to understand their tactics.
Exactly. It's a really tough situation, and it highlights how important international cooperation and information sharing are when you're dealing with these really sophisticated state-sponsored cyber threats. Because these groups are incredibly skilled, well-resourced.
Oh, for sure.
They often have the backing of their governments, which makes it really challenging to detect them and figure out who's behind these attacks.
Okay, here's a headline that hits close to home, I think, for a lot of organizations. A ransomware attack on the city of Columbus has impacted, get this, 500,000 people. 500,000.
Yeah, this attack happened back in July 2024, and it involved a ransomware group called Reseda. The city was able to prevent them from actually deploying file encrypting ransomware, but Reseda says they got away with 6.5 terabytes of data.
Wow.
And then, of course, a portion of that ended up on the dark web.
Of course. So we're talking names, addresses, social security number, financial data.
The whole works. The city is offering 2 years of free credit monitoring and identity restoration services to anyone who was affected. But still, this attack is a really clear example of how bold and sophisticated these ransomware gangs are becoming. And it shows that we need strong cybersecurity defenses in place at all levels of government because these attacks can disrupt services that people rely on and impact huge numbers of people.
All right, next up, a story about social engineering. Cyber criminals are using the popularity of AI platforms like ChatGPT to their advantage.
Right. Barracuda Networks has found this big phishing campaign that's going around. It's impersonating OpenAI to try to steal ChatGPT user credentials.
Okay, how are they doing that?
They're sending out these emails that claim there's been a problem with your ChatGPT subscription payment. And of course, they want you to click on a malicious link to update your details.
Of course they do.
These phishing emails, they've been targeting businesses all over the world using all kinds of different domains and techniques to try and get around those email security checks.
So sneaky.
It is, and it just goes to show that these phishing attacks are evolving. They're finding new ways to exploit the popularity of these AI platforms. So user awareness and education are absolutely critical to combat this. Individuals and organizations need to be careful about what they click on and make sure anything related to these platforms is legitimate.
So true. And for our last headline today, let's look at the growing field of AI security. It's attracting a lot of investment.
Definitely. There's a startup, Noma Security. They focus on AI security, and they've just secured $32 million in Series A funding. That's huge. They're going to use the money to develop their platform, which is specifically designed to secure the data and life cycle of generative AI applications.
So they're trying to get ahead of the game.
Yeah, exactly. They're addressing the really unique security challenges that come with Gen AI, things like misconfigured data pipelines, those vulnerabilities in open source models, and the potential for people to use malicious prompts to try and control the AI.
It's a whole new world.
It is. Their platform offers what they call end-to-end security for the data and AI lifecycle, covering everything from code security, data pipeline protection, model security, all the way to real-time monitoring.
So this funding round, it shows that investors are really paying attention to AI security.
Absolutely. They see those emerging threats associated with using Gen AI. It's encouraging because it means we're putting more resources and attention towards this really important area.
Absolutely, because as more people use AI, securing those systems and dealing with these new risks is critical.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah, it really is a complex landscape for sure. But, going back to Noma Security for a second and their whole approach to safeguarding those Gen AI applications, I think their platform's pretty interesting. This whole idea of end-to-end security for that data and AI lifecycle, it's addressing a real gap, I think, in the industry.
I think so too. AI is being adopted so quickly.
It is.
And it feels like sometimes the security measures just haven't caught up,
Right.
which leaves everyone open to these new, more sophisticated threats.
Exactly. And what's interesting about Noma's approach is that they're really focusing on those unique challenges that come with Gen AI. Like you said, those misconfigured data pipelines, making sure that open source models aren't vulnerable, and dealing with the potential for malicious prompt injection, that kind of thing. These are areas where you need specialized security solutions.
Yeah, and they're really emphasizing real-time monitoring, which I think is key in this kind of rapidly changing environment.
For sure. Early detection and response are absolutely crucial if you want to minimize the impact of any kind of breach or attack.
Absolutely. And it's not just about Noma's specific approach. I think their funding round is a big deal in itself.
Right.
$32 million, Series A funding. That shows a lot of confidence from investors, not just in Noma's vision, but also in the whole AI security market.
Absolutely. It's a much needed, I think, influx of capital that's going to fuel more innovation and development in the field. Hopefully, it'll also encourage more entrepreneurs and investors to really prioritize AI security because it's a critical need, and addressing it effectively is going to take everyone working together.
I agree. Taking a step back and looking at all the news we've talked about today, it seems like we're seeing a convergence of a few really major trends in cybersecurity.
Yeah, definitely.
He's got the rise of AI, the ransomware gangs are getting more sophisticated, and you can never forget about those nation-state actors. It all adds up to a pretty complex and challenging environment. I bet it's a pretty tough time to be a cybersecurity professional.
It is challenging, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But it's also exciting. There are new technologies and approaches being developed all the time to try and counter these threats. Like we were just talking about, the role of AI in both offensive and defensive cybersecurity is really growing.
It is. We're seeing it everywhere. From Google's Big Sleep project to what Noma's doing, AI has the potential to totally change how we approach vulnerability research, threat detection, even incident response. The benefits could be huge.
They could. But, like any powerful technology, there are also some inherent risks to think about. We have to consider the possibility of AI being used for the wrong reasons, for malicious purposes.
Right. And as AI gets more sophisticated, we really have to make sure we're developing the right ethical guidelines and security measures to prevent that from happening.
I completely agree. And another trend that we can't ignore is, how much bolder and impactful these ransomware attacks are becoming, like what happened with the city of Columbus. It's a pretty stark reminder of how devastating these attacks can be.
Yeah, targeting essential services like that,
Mm.
it doesn't just disrupt things. It affects huge numbers of people. And the fact that Reseda claimed to have taken so much data, that's scary.
It is. It shows just how important it is for organizations to really strengthen their defenses and make sure they have good data backup and recovery plans in place.
And let's not forget about those nation-state actors. The FBI's request for information on those Chinese groups targeting Sophos firewalls, that's a reminder that these attacks are happening all the time. And it can be really hard to figure out who's behind them and how to stop them.
It's true. These groups are so skilled, they have a lot of resources, and they often have the support of their governments. So international cooperation and information sharing are absolutely essential.
So where does all this leave us? I think it's safe to say that the cybersecurity landscape is more complex and challenging than ever.
It is, but it's also an incredibly dynamic and innovative field. There's always something new happening.
Yeah, it's a pretty thrilling time to be involved in cybersecurity, but it also means you have to be constantly vigilant, constantly learning and improving.
Couldn't agree more. And with that, let's wrap up part 2 of today's Cybersecurity HQ news report. We'll be back shortly for part 3, where we'll finish our analysis and talk about some of the key takeaways.
All right, welcome back. We've covered a lot of ground today, haven't we?
We have.
Everything from those specific incidents, like the St. Xavier University data breach and that phishing operation that Colette Akinwal Ojalad was behind, to these broader trends like AI and cybersecurity and how much bolder these ransomware gangs are getting. So as we wrap things up, what does it all mean? What are the big takeaways from today's deep dive?
Well, I think the most important takeaway is that this threat landscape, it's not static. It's constantly shifting. And the attackers, they're getting more and more sophisticated, so we have to adapt our defenses to keep up.
Yeah, and that case with the Chinese hackers targeting those Sophos firewalls, that really highlights that.
It does.
These groups, they're so skilled, they're patient, and they're in it for the long haul. They'll put in the time and the resources if they think it's worth it.
Exactly. And it's not just high-profile organizations or government agencies that are being targeted. It really could be anyone,
Correct.
which is why cybersecurity is so important. It doesn't matter who you are or what you do.
Another takeaway, and I think this is a big one, is that you need a layered approach to security. There's no single solution that's going to protect you from everything. So having multiple layers of defense, that's essential.
It is. We're talking about everything from the basics, like strong passwords, using multi-factor authentication, all the way to those more advanced technologies like intrusion detection systems, SIEM tools.
Let's not forget about the human element. I mean, those social engineering attacks like that ChatGPT phishing campaign we talked about, they still work.
They do. People are often the weakest link. So education and awareness are key. Everyone needs to know how to spot those suspicious emails, those links, those websites that just don't seem right.
Absolutely. And then there's AI in cybersecurity. It's a game changer.
It has so much potential.
It really does. But it also comes with new risks that we need to be prepared for.
Right. Like with Google's Big Sleep, it shows just how powerful AI can be for finding vulnerabilities. But it also makes you think, what if someone uses that power for bad?
It's a double-edged sword. So it sounds like we need those specialized AI security solutions, like what Noma Security is developing.
I think so. As AI gets more and more integrated into everything we do, we need to make sure it's being used safely and responsibly. So having those strong ethical guidelines and security measures in place, that's going to be crucial.
I think today also highlighted how important international cooperation and information sharing really are.
I completely agree. Cybercrime is a global problem.
It is. So if we want to be effective, we have to share intelligence, coordinate responses, and hold those attackers accountable. And that takes everyone working together.
Absolutely. Whether it's law enforcement working together on those investigations, like the one that led to Kalade Akinwale Ojala being arrested, or security researchers sharing what they know about new threats, collaboration is key if we want to stay one step ahead.
Well said. The more we work together, the better we can defend ourselves against these threats, which seem to be changing all the time.
Couldn't have put it better myself.
We've talked a lot about the threats, the vulnerabilities, the challenges today. But it's important to remember that there's hope, too. There are some incredibly smart people out there working hard to develop new solutions, protect our data, make the digital world a safer place.
That's a good point. It's easy to focus on the negative, but there's a lot of progress being made, and staying positive is important.
And each of us has a role to play in this. By staying informed, taking steps to protect ourselves and our data, and supporting those who are on the front lines, we can all make a difference.
We care.
So that brings us to the end of today's Cybersecurity HQ News Report. Stay vigilant, stay informed, and stay safe online.
As always.
Until next time.